But I think even adults who haven't been through trauma, can tell you that it's sometimes difficult to talk about our feelings. I think that is the beauty of music therapy, because clients can come. They don't necessarily need to say exactly what they want to explore. We can just explore in music.
Will my adopted child be okay? What will their future look like? Where did I go wrong? Hi neighbor, I'm Tim, an adoptive parent and adoption mentor. If you're a struggling adoptive parent searching for answers in your parenting journey, you're in the right place. I teach Christian adoptive parents how to be okay, even if their kids aren't, by anchoring them in biblical principles. Anchors of hope and healing are on the way. Today I want to welcome back my neighbor from London via Hong Kong and New York, Crystal Luk-Worrall. Crystal Luk-Worrall is a music therapist, EMDR practitioner, and clinical supervisor specializing in helping children and families heal from early trauma. As the founder of Clap and Toot, she integrates creative therapies to support emotional regulation, attachment, and trauma recovery, particularly for adoptive families. With a background in music therapy from Guildhall School of Music and Drama and extensive experience working with children, Crystal has spoken at major conferences and been featured on industry podcasts. Through her clinical work, speaking engagements, and training, she is dedicated to making trauma-informed therapy more accessible. Welcome back, Crystal. Today I wanted to bring you on to share your expertise with music therapy to help adopted children. So thank you for coming back.
Thank you for having me back. It was a joy.
I really enjoyed that conversation. And for those who are listening, you can't see what I'm seeing because behind you, I see all kinds of musical instruments. And I wanted you to share that aspect of your profession where you incorporate music therapy to help adopted children. So as we get right into this, can you maybe share your backstory, how you got into using music to help these adopted children?
Yeah. Well, my backstory would go way back when I was little. So I was a pianist. I was an aspiring pianist. And I was taught to play classical music. So a lot of Bach, a lot of Mozart. And it came to a point maybe when I was 14, 15, where I knew that I loved music and I wanted to do something with music, but I don't want to spend hours on my own practicing. I want to be with people. So the two things that I love was music and people. And I came across music therapy and I was just hooked already immediately. And I spent the next decade working towards that goal. And the way that I started working with adoptive families is through a parent. So one of my first ever music therapy client was an adopted young person. It turns out that their mum is part of an adoption charity who then invited me to give a webinar on music therapy and adoption. And then just from that one webinar, so many people, so many parents called me afterwards. And then I just fell in love with working with the adoption community because I feel a very unusual sense of community nowadays from your community. And I just love being an ally.
Well, that's awesome. Now, you say you're a pianist. I see all kinds of instruments. Do you play all those ones? I mean, I see, well, you describe what they are because I don't want to butcher. There's so many kinds of instruments that you have there.
Yeah, so I've got djembe, I've got an ocean drum, I've got some bells, colorful bells. I've got a small guitar, violin, cello, and you can't see, but I've also got a load of small percussive instruments as well. I don't play all of them to a professional level. I think that's the beauty of it as well, because when you think about music, everybody has a different perspective or perception of what music is. Some people find it very elitist. Some people find it very accessible. And I think that's one of the strengths of music and music therapy, because people come in not knowing what to expect, but the music has that flexibility. It's got a very welcoming quality to it, where it can cater for a lot of different people.
You said you wanted to or you found yourself wanting to serve the adoption community.
Hmm.
So, how does music therapy help children regulate their emotions compared to like EMDR or traditional talk therapy?
Yeah, talking is helpful, but I think even adults who haven't been through trauma can tell you that it's sometimes difficult to talk about our feelings. I think that is the beauty of music therapy because clients can come. They don't necessarily need to say exactly what they want to explore. We can just explore in music. So, for example, if a client come in looking quite low, looking quite unhappy in themselves, and I might say, "Oh, what's wrong?" and they might not want to answer that, and I could suggest that why don't we just start the session by playing some music about how we feel today? And just by doing that, there is a physical connection between the body and the emotions. They're also kind of taking the emotions out of their brain. So it's something, it becomes an artistic experience. If they wanted to, then we can, when the improvisation finish, we can look back to the music that we played together and we can just talk about the music, how it felt to play music just now. So instead of talking directly of the issue that they might be facing that day, we kind of putting another layer, putting a bit of a barrier in that difficult conversation. So we talk about music that represents what might be troubling for them. So it doesn't feel as direct.
It was interesting because what I was hearing is that when a client comes into you, you kind of try to assess what they're feeling at the moment and then find music to meet the mood, if you will. And then they can start to evolve through the session from being maybe, say, somber to more happy. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do use pre-composed music in sessions. So I think a lot of times there is a stigma against negative emotions, and especially at school, because there is such a pressure for children to feel always happy at school. And yes, happiness is a lovely feeling. By not addressing the more difficult feelings, children don't get to express them. And how can we expect children to then be resilient if we don't encourage them to express it? So in sessions, if a child comes in feeling quite low, I do meet them where they are. I might ask them to think about, you look quite low. I wonder how your body feels. Because one of the issue that young people who have experienced early trauma is that it's quite difficult for them to recognize how emotions feel in the body. So they might feel something, but they don't have the word for it, which makes it even more frustrating. So part of this exercise, where we call it music and imagery, is to help them recognize how certain emotions feel in the body, and then we find a piece of music that match that level. But we just really listen to them, really acknowledge to the either difficult or positive feeling that they are coming in with in the session that day, and then we can make an artwork around it. And then after the drawing process, or sometimes children might dance to the music that they chose, we then explore how did it feel to stay with that feeling.
I know you can't share confidential information, but just in generic way to tell the story,
Hmm.
describe what a child goes through, what that transition is. Maybe they're coming in feeling down, somber, and you play some music that's appropriate for that emotion. How does a session with you then evolve to where when they leave, how are they feeling?
I tend to think about the work in a big picture because some of my clients stay with me for years, 3 4 years. In terms of the single session, how the child often reports to feel after a single session is words that they would use is a weight off my shoulder, or that their parents or their teachers just reported, I don't know what it is, but they do generally seem a bit more settled after sessions. So I think what they're talking about is regulation, because we have given them that 1 hour in that day where they can be free to be themselves, they can be creative, and they can play, no matter how old they are, just for that 1 hour. And if you think about even adults having that 1 hour in your day, what good can it do to you, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
I love playing, but we don't tend to think about that for ourselves because they have time to express themselves. They generally do feel a bit lighter after a session. And when we think about sessions in the grander scheme, how does a piece of work transform through the year, through years? Oh, the things I've seen are amazing.
Well, it sounds like this is a process.
Yeah.
You know, in our society today, we want immediate results. And so this is a process. And I guess I'm hearing too that, you know, music is a language, which makes
Mm.
sense. And so you're communicating with your clients. That's just really cool to hear that they're able to express themselves through music, and you can play off of that and engage with them with your abilities to play music too. So wow, that's really amazing. And you're seeing positive results then too.
Yeah, I love it. I always tell people I don't love talking, but I love talking about music therapy.
What are some of the biggest emotional and behavioral changes you've seen? Where have you been able to take them where they are to where they need to be? How can you describe that for us? I remember in our EMDR discussion, you talked about
Mm.
bringing memories from the amygdala out.
Mm.
Does the music help do that too?
Music helps in a slightly different way. So you
Okay.
know how music is essentially vibration,
Hmm.
and especially singing. When we sing, we feel vibration in our body, right? And that vibration activates our body's natural way of regulating our emotions. So one of the simplest tips that I often give family is if you're stressed, just hum, because just the act of humming regulates you and it regulates people around you. So if you have a child who's quite dysregulated, just hum with them.
What ages do you incorporate music therapy for adopted children?
Mm, that's a wonderful, wonderful question. In music therapy, I wouldn't necessarily put an age limit to it because even as young as a baby who's 2 or even 1, music can be very beneficial. At the age of 1 or 2, music can help regulate a baby. And but at that age, we would be looking at working with the parents as well because we can't be there with the baby all the time. So we'll be looking at upskilling the parents with musical skills that they can help the babies to regulate. So it's a lot about focusing on the relationship between the baby or the toddler and the parents and carer at that age. And then later down the line, at the age of maybe 4 to 5, when they become quite verbal, we want to equip them with tools where they can verbalize or recognize how feelings feel in their body. Actually, I think that is the first step. The first step is recognizing that they have feelings and recognizing how they feel in the body. And then the next step would be to help them to express them either verbally or creatively. Now, at that age, kind of 4 to 5, we're still expecting children to co-regulate with parents or carers. So we know that children that age don't have the full toolkit to calm themselves down. So they need their parents there to support them. When they are 7 or 8, that's when we start giving them tools to help notice that they're being dysregulated. How do I calm myself down? But that process can last years. I mean, I think a lot of adults don't know how to regulate themselves. It's a skill to have. And maybe that's not a skill that's taught to us when we were younger.
Which kind of music therapy do you find works better? Or maybe it's just for the person. You talk about humming, you've talked about singing, you've talked about playing instruments. Is there one that works better? Or is it just kind of depends on the person?
It depends on the person.
Okay.
And it goes back to what I said earlier. People's relationship with music is different. Let me ask you, what kind of music do you like listening to?
I'm going to date myself, but there was a band, they're still playing. I mean, they're in their 70s or 80s, Chicago. I don't know if you've heard of them,
Yes, of
but
course.
there are certain songs that they have, just their harmony
Mm.
or the way the songs might start and then it keeps building and building. And then when the horns come in, I've shared that on Facebook before. Just, you know, this song is a good way to start the day. You can never get too much Chicago, in my opinion. You know, or there's another group, the Bee Gees, and just their harmonies
Mm.
when they would hit certain notes, And because they were brothers, they just had this uniqueness about them. When they would hit this harmony, I go, oh, really calm me. So I know there's certain songs that I've listened to so many times, I'm waiting for a certain chord. And when I hear
Mm,
that chord, especially if it's a group that really harmonizes well, when I hear that chord, it's just like I can feel something relax over me.
yeah.
Because and some of these songs are decades old for me, but I
Yeah.
can hear that chord and I go, wow, okay, and it just brings me down. So as you're talking about this, I see how I've used it, not really understanding the benefits of it, but I'm sure other people can relate to that too. They have a favorite song, and for whatever
Mm,
reason, maybe it's the words, maybe it's the arrangement or whatever. But yeah, I see that. So it's
yeah.
interesting.
And it's interesting because what you're talking about is the memory that you have of the music. So it
Hmm.
might be something around where you were when you first listened to it, or and then you have all these accumulated years of relationship with this piece of music, specific piece of music. Now, one thing that's quite interesting about working with young people is they don't have as big of a musical repertoire as adults do,
Hmm.
just because they haven't had those years, right? So, in that sense, when I work with young people, I think that pre-composed music have their place because young people listen to pop music all the time. But also, there is something about their relationship with music that's not completely molded yet. That makes it very easy for them to try different things. Try how scraping the string on the cello might feel, where an adult might feel weird doing that, but they don't. So there is something very playful and very explorative about improvising. I find that young people access improvisation really well.
When you mention playing a stringed instrument, I was thinking that vibrations coming through their fingers too.
Yes, yes. So playing instruments is a very physical experience, isn't it?
Hmm.
Quite unlike EMDR, music therapy, the children are very active, so they're all over the room. There is something about moving their body that helps regulate them. So whether it's feeling the vibration on their chest when playing the cello, or just playing the drum, there is something about getting the energy out in a place that is creative and
Hmm.
aesthetically beautiful. That's quite important in music therapy, or at least in my opinion.
And it sounds like with the music therapy, you're able to get them moving, and whether they're singing, playing, or whatever, that movement is helping them to regulate. Am I hearing that right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I can't recall any sessions where me and a child sit still.
Right.
It's a very active. Most sessions are very active. Either we're building something, or we are playing music, or we're listening to music together while moving or drawing. And actually, as you ask that question about the physicality of music therapy, there is something about music that really encourage people to reflect on how they relate with each other, because in music, even if one person is playing music, the other person is listening. So there is always a two-way experience, or you improvise together, you have each other's music going. And something that occur quite often early in the session is the loudness of music. I mean, children, young people love the drum, and very often they come into session just play the drum extremely loud. And I often see it as a bit of a test of trust. I sometimes interpret it as them asking, can you tolerate everything that I'm carrying? Because it is a test. It is actually physically quite hard to hold that level of loudness. But I love that they can do that in a creative and playful way, instead of having to ask directly, because most of the time they wouldn't have the resources or the capacity to ask, their therapist, look, I have all these stuff happen to me. I know I need to work through it. I don't know how. Are you with me? So they can't ask that.
It sounds like when a child comes to you that you're really partnering with them.
Mm.
When a child is maybe beating the drums really loud, do you see that start to decrease over the time of the session, or sometimes maybe they just need to be loud the whole session? Does it depend on what the child is?
It really depends. Just like everyone else, there are good times and there are difficult times. Sometimes children come into session, play really loudly for the entire session for loads of reasons. They needed to get the energy out. Maybe that's the only way they know to express themselves. Maybe they are testing me. Maybe they're seeing if I can tolerate them. Sometimes it's just the physicality of it. It is very enjoyable when you play really loudly, and sometimes children who have experienced trauma in their life has additional sensory needs as well. I wouldn't interpret loudness all the way as negative emotions, but I equally wouldn't interpret quietness and calmness completely as something that's positive. Because if you think about a child who's very scared and really fearful in exploring their voice, exploring the music they can make, is telling you how uncomfortable they are in their body and how uncomfortable they are with their place in the world. When we look at children's relationship with music, children's relationship with music therapy, we can see how they relate with the rest of their world.
You're really perceptive. I can hear that the way you describe, because I could easily see where you think, well, if the kid's just beating drums, you aren't making any
Mm.
progress. You know, if it's really loud and stays loud, you haven't made any progress. But maybe that's the outlet they needed that day. And then,
Exactly.
and then on the flip side, when you say somebody's really quiet, you're able to see that there's something going on that maybe they need more reassurance or something to that effect. So this is really fascinating. Now, as we wrap up today, what would you recommend to parents who want to incorporate music therapy into the lifestyle for their kids? How do they seek out professionals like you? Or what
Yeah.
could they do at home?
Yeah. Well, let's start by what can they do at home, because
Okay.
that's something you can start today.
Yes.
Humming, like I said, is a wonderful tool that is very underrated. Hum when you stress, hum with your child, sing with your child. And another thing I would suggest is mindful listening. Like you said earlier, you've been listening to these music for years and you know you like them. I wonder, when was the last time you sit down and properly listen through to a piece of music you really love and appreciate all the chords and notice all the voices that are in there?
I
That
did
is
that last week,
yeah.
actually. Yeah.
How did you find it?
Well, there was a song I remember that and I remember where I was the first time I heard the song. I was on a school bus going to a band competition, marching
Mm-hmm.
band. And I've heard this song the first time, and I heard this one guy's note, and I go, oh, something just stuck there. I go, that guy can sing. And
Ah,
I've got it on a playlist on YouTube. Great you have YouTube, because now you can go back and
yeah.
save playlists and stuff like that. So I was doing that last week. I was just pulling it
Yeah.
up, and I was listening to that note, and it took me all the way back to high school,
Mm,
which was crazy. But yeah, there's memories in my head that are music related. So I'm glad
yeah.
you're putting actionable steps to, things I was doing myself, but now adoptive parents like myself can incorporate that into how we parent our children and help them to regulate themselves. So this is great. This is really great.
Mm,
Now, how would they seek out? You've talked about how they can incorporate this themselves by humming and singing, that type of thing. But how
mm.
would they seek out a person like you?
Well, there are music therapists all over the world. But I think the thing you need to be careful with, not every music therapist is trauma informed. So you want a music therapist who knows how trauma impacts on the brain and impacts on a child's development. So that would be the first thing, that when you get in touch with a music therapist, just ask, what's your experience with trauma informed care? And also, you want someone who's experienced in working with young people, because you would know, I'm sure, your repertoire, your musical repertoire, and your son's musical repertoire are completely different.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You need at least someone who's open to exploring the kind of music that young people are listening to nowadays. And also think about your child's relationship with music. So if you have a child who is really into DJing or really into songwriting, then maybe someone who focuses solely on improvisation isn't the best fit. So you're thinking about musical fit as well between the therapist and the young person.
Perfect. Now, I know you shared with me before we came on that you have a resource that you would like to gift to my audience. Can you describe what that is?
Yes. So it's a list of 6 doable things that you can try to co-regulate with your child. So when you feel like they are not listening, when I say not listening, I don't mean it in a bad way. I just mean it as in when a child is dysregulated, they literally can't listen. Their body's too busy keeping themselves safe. They literally can't listen to you. They can't interpret words. So what do you do? What can you do in those situations to calm your child's brain down so that you can have conversation and you can reflect on what happened? So the resource that you mentioned has a list of 6 things that you can try.
Perfect. And that'll be in the show notes, so you can click on it, download it, and start to incorporate those into your life. So, Crystal, this has, again, been so amazing. Thank you for sharing your expertise. And I can just hear your passion for these kids, and especially how you can incorporate music into helping these children who are dealing with some serious things. We need people like you to help us in this journey. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so grateful Crystal could join us today. Having someone with her wisdom and heart to walk alongside us in our parenting journey really makes a difference. Here are the main takeaways to illustrate just how healing and empowering music therapy can be for adopted children and their families. Number 1, music as expression. Music therapy offers a safe, nonverbal way for children to express big feelings when words are hard to find. Number 2, active and playful. Sessions are hands-on and engaging. Children play, sing, move, and get creative, which helps them better regulate their emotions. Number 3, every journey is unique. Progress takes time, and every child responds differently. The right approach depends on each child's relationship with music. Number 4, tips for parents. Crystal recommends simple activities like humming and mindful listening at home to help kids feel calm and connected. And finally, number 5, finding the right therapist. Look for trauma-informed professionals who understand both adoption and music preferences. Don't forget to check the show notes for Crystal's free resource to help you co-regulate with your child through music. We hope you feel encouraged to make music a part of your family's healing journey. That's all for this episode. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, this is Tim, encouraging you to do what you can now. I hope today's episode encouraged you to face the storms in your parenting journey with courage and confidence. If so, would you please share this episode with another adoptive parent? It would also bless me and the mission of this podcast if you would take a couple of minutes and leave a review for the show on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, this is Tim, encouraging you to do what you can now.